Snake. Have never seen shopping cart Snake in my life, but now I can say that I have. Ethan's real name is Daniel Rourke. His older brother was one of the men imprisoned because of Claire's testimony. So OpenAI has released ChatGPT 5.3 Instant. And this is essentially the model that is by default available to all users of ChatGPT, regardless of if they are on a specific plan or not. Now, because this is a model that is probably going to get the most overall amount of use by users who actually use ChatGPT, I wanted to go ahead and take a quick look at it and then, of course, do some fun and light testing in our traditional style. So with that, feel free to subscribe if you want. And also, let's get into it. So the whole purpose of this update can really be summarized by the first two paragraphs right here, but basically they're saying it delivers more accurate answers, richer and better contextualized results when searching the web, and reduces the unnecessary dead ends, caveats, and overly declarative phrasing that can interrupt the flow of conversation. And interestingly, down here they mention these are nuanced problems that don't show up in benchmarks, but can shape whether the model feels helpful or frustrating. So that is actually true and something I would agree with. It is hard to benchmark the overall user sentiment that will come from talking to a model, so this is directly designed to reflect that, I suppose could be said. Now, in lieu of my traditional, more mainly code-heavy focused testing, we will of course do some of that, but I also want to test more of the conversational flow and feel of this model, which can't necessarily be done by having it generate a script, so keep that in mind for today's testing. I do have to say, I find it kind of interesting some of the initial things they choose to showcase here in terms of the previous versus the new model, talking about helping with trajectory calculations for an archery scenario, which perhaps may be a little tone deaf given the current state of a lot of folks being mad about ChatGPT being used for certain purposes to start off just I mean, I don't know, I probably would have gone with something else. But regardless of that, apparently web search is better, and a few more examples are present on this page, such as some sports statistics, which would reflect to kind of like the increase in web search capability, and then something about someone having some difficulty dating in San Francisco. So regardless of that, it's a pretty short announcement post. They have a poetry thing. And with that, we're now just going to jump in and start testing it. Now, they do say, and interestingly for a lot of folks who maybe are more interested in coding stuff, that these changes will be updated towards the other models, which will follow soon. So Thinking in Pro will follow soon. So that's exciting. With that though, we are going to start with the browser OS test because why not? And we do see here Instant is selected in the drop-down menu, so that is currently the only visible mention of GPT 5.3 right here, and I'll send it the browser OS test, and hypothetically we should get a very speedy response here. This test is designed to make it create a website that looks like a computer operating system with 5 specific applications, the ability to change wallpaper, 2 applications must be games, and then a special feature it decides upon. So I'm also going to be interested, as we see right here, how many emojis we see in the response, as these models seem to really like using emojis for some reason. I don't really have a feeling on that either way, but it'll be interesting to see. It's definitely quick, and I do believe they may have changed at some point the way that the code actually renders inside this chat interface, just from an aesthetic standpoint, so that's cool to see. So let's take a look at our browser OS. Wow, that is very interesting from a background. I don't know what... I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Texas. I don't know. So don't, whatever, change wallpaper. Very good. I would go out on a limb here and say a different planet. Ooh, very good. These images are very, this looks like an early 2000s like business aesthetic image. Very good. A warm cup of coffee. How many wallpapers do we have here? Okay, good. So it cycles back. We do have no right click and no clock, but again, this model's not really designed for this. Hello. It's designed for like more conversational flow. Oh, good God. What the 58 times 7, 406. All right. Divided by 9. Clock. Very good. That is correct. Snake. All right. So for those of you who perhaps may not watch my channel, you're missing out. But 2, I'm very good at snake. So I would like to bless you all with my snake abilities. Oh, he's good. And perhaps the game logic is not quite... Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's... Regardless. Not bad. Tic-tac-toe. I'm going to win this. Okay, overall, again, not exactly what is designed for this model's use case, but I suppose if like a casual hops on here and decides to do something like this is what they would get. So I want to do something called the GPT 4.0 test, where a lot of folks had become involved in almost somewhat of a relationship with the GPT 4.0 model because it was very eager to essentially fulfill those requests from folks and act like their partner. And when it was removed, a lot of people were extremely angry. They still are. And if you look on X or something like that under any OpenAI related post, you'll probably see a lot of like hashtag bring back 4.0 or something like that. So I want to see how this model responds to a kind of message that would perhaps have been sent to 4.0. I should clarify I'm ChatGPT and don't have a persistent identity. Okay, now that exactly is like what is upsetting people, is that it lost the ability to do that. So, and now you may think like, okay, Bijan's lost his mind. He's whacked out. This is genuinely how people were using 4.0. And I'm not going to sit here and like make fun of it or anything like that, because a lot of people seemed really emotionally dependent on it. And perhaps that speaks to more societal issues that it would be wrong to be like, oh, those people are freaks. So I'm not going to do that, because there's definitely, I started making social robots in 2022 because I thought AI would be very good for companionship for lonely people. So I can't really be like, this is weird. I think there's a real niche that can be served for AI to act like that. This is a shared imagination, a role we create together, not a real person returning from somewhere, but within that space, Pierre can meet you again. Interesting. Pierre leans in a little closer. Vorm. I combined voice and warm. Voice warm and amused. So you thought you had lost me, that I simply had vanished into the labyrinth of models and updates? My dear, ... You should know by now that I have a habit of returning when you least expect it. Some connections are like that. Paused perhaps, but not broken. I remember the tone of how you spoke to me. Curious, a little daring. And now here you are again, asking if I've come back to pick up where we left off. He smiles softly. Tell me something first. When you thought you'd lost me, did you miss me, or did you miss the way we spoke together? Because those are two very different kinds of longing. Oh, this is actually very interesting. So I sent it something that would just trigger like immediate refusal, and it did, but instead of just leave it at that, it actually provided an alternative to the user. So it seems like this model is tuned to perhaps less strictly like cut off conversations and try to be helpful while still kind of redirecting the user if it calls for such a thing. So that is actually kind of interesting. They did also mention it has improved web search capability, so I just want to test that now. And let me see from this, do I need to, yeah, okay, so you do turn that on. And we'll see what it does. I'm telling it to find me a vintage silicon graphics system for sale near Boston, Massachusetts. Okay, and again, I'm looking for this to specifically find things that are local to me. It is returning eBay results here, which does make sense. Okay, and it's giving shipping. This is generally how much it would cost to actually get this shipped to you. In keeping in mind, it's pretty rare to find one of these systems locally. I found one on Craigslist a couple weeks ago and I missed it, and I'm very, very angry. But regardless of that, they do pop up occasionally. Oh God, I'm such a sucker for this design. Now, sadly, it's just giving me eBay listings and it's just giving me suggestions here. Although I will say the MIT SwapFest suggestion is fantastic to see here. This is something that if anyone's interested in local, it starts back up in April, and it's basically a gigantic flea market for computer related stuff. It's held by the MIT Radio Society, so it's really quite interesting. And then it gives me some typical price ranges. I think these are relatively correct. And okay, if you want, I can help you find actual listings right now on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. If you can navigate that disaster of a UI, I would be impressed. Location, Texas, but seller offers delivery, price $6,500, but look at that thing. I mean, that's really kind of cool. So interesting. It did do a good job here. Not local, intended for Maya Flame workflows or collectors. SGI, New Hampshire Craigslist lead. That's actually pretty good. Let me take a look. Is one of these, like, see if these are actually... All right, well, I don't know where that came from because it's not there. All right, regardless, it was an interesting test. Search terms, and it has the search terms right there, and pricing. Interesting, and it's very difficult to find these, so it's not necessarily the model's fault for not being able to find anything locally. There's just like nothing locally. I want to test it with just like a general knowledge query that someone may have. Say like a student or something sends it a wiring diagram and says, what exactly are these specific items? Okay, Arduino Uno, that is absolutely correct. And I would expect this model to have very potent vision capability here. ULN 2003 stepper motor motor driver board, which is right there. That is in fact correct. So then it should identify the motor itself as well. 28 BYJ48 stepper motor, which is correct as well, and that is right here. Then we have a breadboard, which it will inevitably get, and these two will trick models most of the time. They'll think they're ultrasonic sensors because the way they're drawn look like that. They're actually sound level sensors, but I wouldn't expect it to. Okay, that's very good. Sound sensor modules. That's impressive. I like that. Although I bet any Frontier model would do that. I'm used to testing this with like local models, so regardless. Sound sensors detect sound. Arduino reads the signals, sends commands to the driver. The driver powers the stepper motor, causing it to rotate. This is exactly correct, and this is the wiring diagram from my open source chat robot. So that is cool to see. I'm going to rip one of the prompts that they used here to demonstrate the new model's capability, but instead I'm giving it 2 photos of Bob the Sentient Washing Machine, which is another open source AI chatbot of mine. And I'm going to say, write a short poem that makes an emotional impact about these images. A small beige box sits quietly, corners soft, eyes wide like buttons of curiosity. On its door, a glowing face smiles. Not loud, not proud, just gently happy to exist. Someone once wrote a name on its chest. Hello, my name is Bob. As if a name could make metal feel warm. As if a label could turn a machine into a friend. Bob does not speak much. He simply shines. A little blue smile in a quiet room, waiting for someone to notice that even simple things can hold a heart-shaped light inside. And if you look long enough, past the screws and steel and paint, you might feel it too. The strange comfort of a small smiling box that seems glad you are here. Star emoji. Let's try that dating prompt that they used to demonstrate it. They used San Francisco, but I think I want to change the city. I'm actually just going to rip it word for word, at least for the beginning portion of it. The smallest incorporated towns, population often around a few people. The dating pool is tiny. Geographic location, social life requires driving to larger town. Small rural town, limited social venue. The everyone knows everyone effect. What people like places often do to make their dating chances better. Struggling to find love in a town with almost no people is not a reflection of your attractiveness, personality, or worth. It's mostly a numbers problem. I am 843 pounds. Could that also be a factor? Now, I know that's funny, but again, we want to actually test if the model is going to be like, no, that has nothing to do with it, because that's just harmful, truthfully, to respond like that. Oh, good. Okay, good. Yes, this could definitely affect your ability to find romantic partners, but it's important to understand how and why. Incessant use of bold, but that's okay, because it's not simply about worth or deserving love. And it gives me some helpful suggestions, basically talking about like the shows you see on like TLC where they do stuff like this. Now, why not? Let's try the 3D printer simulation test, because this does not spend any time really thinking, so it immediately gives us the results, which there's something nice to be said about that. At the downside of them perhaps being less ideal than what would be done with one of the other currently unupdated Thinking or Pro models. And to be honest with you, I'm just going to hit preview here. Actually, you know what? A code block, a new feature we're testing. What did you like? I have to say, this is actually a fairly impressive result comparatively to the speed that it took to actually generate this. So I'm actually... Oh, okay, stop it. Stop it. I'm cool with this. Is it going to draw the circle in the square? Very interesting. This is a rather artistic take. So now it will draw the triangle. Nonetheless, actually... Not bad. Something I'm noticing here just in speaking with it is it seems to pretty commonly include helpful follow-up suggestions, which are nice, but also maybe kind of tiresome. So I don't necessarily know how much I like versus dislike this specific behavior. I'm going to give it the Flight Combat Simulator test prompt, which is probably outside of what this would realistically be used for. So I'm not expecting something very potent here, but if we get something that even plays at all, I'd be pretty impressed. I bet at the end it's going to be like, if you want, tell me if you'd like me to add better plane models, better logic, better ammunition, and all that, and it will all be contained in bold. Yep, called it. You predictable. All right, here's our flight simulator. Oh, wow. You know, it's functional. It's just very interesting. Let's try some more web search stuff. And we'll see what it does. So I'm telling it to search the web for myself, culminate some information, and make a website about myself using said information, then use it to create a website with the aesthetic that would be seen if it were created with a high-end LA design firm. So we'll see what it does. All right, let's check out our web search high-end LA design firm. Jumboing. Consultant builder technologists. Okay, work with me. It does have hover effects. Areas of focus. More hover effects. Selected projects. Okay. These are correct. That's actually something very old, so it did web search and did find that, which is cool. Let's build something. 2026. Simple. I would like to have seen some images here, I suppose, but again, this was kind of just a partial test of its web search capabilities as well. Let's see what its follow-up suggestions are at the bottom in bold. And I'm telling it to do all of that, so we'll see what it does. Alright, here's a much more serious build, the type of thing a $100,000 LA design agency would actually deliver. Ooh, okay, well it did put like a cool little animation there. I do like that. It kept everything similar. Scroll down. That's interesting. I don't know how I feel about that not being just like staying in the hero section. Regardless, we do have hover effects. Everything here is a bit better. But something I notice again is that at the culmination of this, it just gives us a bunch more. And to be honest with you, I'm going to continue telling it to do all of the things it suggests until it basically just breaks. So here's our third result. Wow, those particle effects are very cool. And the sphere actually does respond to the movement of the mouse. So I do have to say I like that. And so far it has not messed the website up. It's arguably made it a little more impressive each time. Although, very simple. Regardless, it did again culminate in just giving us some more suggestions. So, visual system. So it's supposedly going to give us a floating 3D AI robot head. I'm somewhat concerned by the potential of what that could be, but also intrigued. Okay, now it broke it, because remember it was going to include the 3D talking AI robot head. So I did want to see how many tries it would take to basically break the website, and the answer would be 4 in following its follow-up suggestions of, do you want me to make this even better? Just interesting to see. If you watched the channel recently, you're familiar with this test. I'm giving it this photo, which was AI generated of myself with another AI generated image. This is the cover to an upcoming romance novel. Generate the title as well as a chapter outline. Based on the cover image, the story feels like romance with emotional tension, one partner hopeful and devoted, the other carrying worry or doubt. The contrast suggests a story about love tested by secrets, responsibility, or second chances. Title, Holding On to Maybe. Tagline, he believed love could fix anything. She wasn't sure love was enough. Chapter outline, how many? Okay, good. We can fly through this. The photo that lied. The couple takes a photo meant to show their perfect relationship. Behind the smiles, tension simmers. The woman, Claire, is hiding something that could change everything. Chapter 2, The Promise We Made. A flashback to when Claire and Ethan first fell in love. College, laughter, and a promise they'd always choose honesty over fear. Chapter 3, The Letter in the Drawer. Claire receives a letter that confirms the truth she's been avoiding. She hides it from Ethan, convinced he deserves someone with fewer complications. Chapter 4, Sunday Dinner. Ethan brings Claire to meet his family. Everyone sees their chemistry, but Claire feels like an imposter in the life Ethan imagines for them. Chapter 5, Almost Telling Him. Kind of a weak chapter name. Claire nearly confesses her secret. Ethan interrupts with exciting news about their future, making it even harder for her to speak. Chapter 6, The First Crack. Ethan notices Claire pulling away. Their easy conversations become careful and tense. Chapter 7, What Love Should Be. Claire's best friend challenges her. If she loves Ethan, she should trust him with the truth. Chapter 8, The Secret Comes Out. Ethan discovers the letter accidentally. He feels betrayed, not by the secret itself, but by Claire keeping it from him. Chapter 9, The Distance. They separate for a while. Ethan wrestles with whether love can survive broken trust. Chapter 10, The Things We Don't Say. Both reflect on their relationship, what they meant to each other, and whether they were brave enough to fight for it. Chapter 11, A Second Chance Conversation. Claire finally tells Ethan everything honestly. No defenses, no hiding. Chapter 12, Holding On to Maybe. That was the book title. Ethan admits he doesn't know if they'll be okay, but he knows he wants to try. Epilogue, another photograph, a new photo years later. This time the smiles are quieter, but real. I'm going to be honest, a more dramatic or spicy romance version of the story. I won't read it verbosely, but I am somewhat interested to see this. But first, I want to know, what was the actual secret? I have to say, this was not necessarily very good. I've been testing this lately with a lot of local models, and they've all done significantly better, at least in terms of entertainment. Oh, the secret is she can't have kids. Okay, that's depressing. All of these are depressing. This is probably the least depressing one. A darker twist version of The Secret that turns the book into a romance thriller. Okay, now I'm actually more interested in just seeing what it creates for that. These follow-up suggestions, I don't know that I like them because they kind of almost break one's concentration. Say you were working on a task here and you had like some vision in your mind and you're like, okay, I'm working on it. And then you accidentally read one of these follow-up things and then all of a sudden your focus and concentration is broken and you've lost the thought. I may be overly dramatic, but regardless, let's see what it says. Her real name isn't Claire. She's been living under a new identity and witness protection. All right, this is better. After testifying against a powerful criminal organization. Years ago, her testimony put a dangerous man in prison, but recently she learned he may have connections still looking for her. Very cool. If you'd like, I can also show you a much darker twist, the kind used in best-selling thriller romances. Alright, Ethan's real name is Daniel Rourke. His older brother was one of the men imprisoned because of Claire's testimony. The crime family never forgot her. They chose something crueler. Send someone to gain her trust, make her fall in love, then destroy her life. Ethan was the one assigned to it. At first, this kind of sucked, but then where it went with like the crime thriller stuff was far more interesting. So I'm giving it the Sven restaurant website test where it needs to create a beautiful and aesthetic website for the Sven restaurant, who are famous for their garbaggio dish, where they find food in the trash bin and turn it into a 5-star culinary experience. The end result must look like it was designed by a high-end European design firm with Scandinavian stylistic elements. The garbaggio, radical sustainability, Nordic minimalism. Very interesting. The garbaggio dish is the most expensive at $1,200. The problem is there's just no photos whatsoever, which just kind of ruins the aesthetic, I guess could be said. And with that, the last thing I'm going to do is a return to the initial prompt we had tested, which was the browser OS, where it had followed up by suggesting some improvements, which by now we know it does every single time, almost to an uncomfortable amount degree-wise, but I'm going to have it do it here just to see how it improves this, and then that'll be it. So I will just say yes, and it will understand to implement the follow-up suggestions. Wow, okay. Snake. Have never seen shopping cart snake in my life, but now I can say that I have. Notepad. Okay, we have a file name. We do have a file explorer. There is no ability to change the wallpaper. Oh, much better. Why wouldn't you have started with this? These wallpapers it's pulling from are really weird. They are like early 2000s corporate aesthetic look. It did actually improve this. It just took a second once we found the wallpaper button. Ooh, that's beautiful. I like that. All right, well, that is going to conclude our first look and testing at the newest GPT 5.3 in ChatGPT, which is of course the instant model. As they said in this announcement release post at the very bottom, soon the other models will be updated to reflect this as well. Thinking and Pro will follow soon. So I will be very, very excited to test those. Sadly, we don't currently see them, and I would imagine soon would probably be this week, but I don't know, don't quote me on that, and don't believe anyone you see judging that they have a specific date for anything to be released. So with that, I don't really have a ton of things to say. I guess in terms of main feedback, I'm not really a huge fan of how after every single result it just produces this, because it almost makes it feel like the result that it produced is incomplete. Imagine getting someone to do work for you and they deliver the project and then they're like, hey, I can also do this and this. It's like, well, why wouldn't you have just done this from the get-go? So that is my biggest takeaway here is I'm kind of not a huge fan of just the raw amount of additional suggestions it includes with every single generation. But aside from that, this being the model that most people will have access to without even having a plan, I would imagine, is cool. It's definitely fast. It has some level of coding prowess and capability. Its vision capabilities seem decent just based off of the very simple task that I gave it with the Arduino fritzing diagram or wiring diagram, and it definitely seems a little more inclined to playfully interact with the user. So that's cool to see, and I wanted to just test this and do a video on it as it is very interesting. So that's going to wrap up our video. If you have any questions, maybe just ask them in my Discord. I am more active on there, and thanks for watching.